Marvin.
Thank you for coming, Terry. My question is, what would you do different than Kevin, and why do you think you can do a better job?
First, let me say I have never met Kevin McCarthy. I've never stood this close to the man. We spoke on one occasion. We were across the room from each other. There was a water conference over at Bakersfield College last year, and he was the keynote speaker at lunch. And I had just read about a bill that he co-sponsored with Devin Nunes to give control of California's water distribution to the federal government. And that didn't make much sense to me. So I wrote an op-ed piece that was published in the Fresno paper. And then he was at this water conference. So I asked him a question from across the room, and he answered it. And that's been the extent of my connection to Kevin McCarthy. So I don't want to say anything about him personally. I don't know him. I know that a lot of people, including, I presume, many people in this room, know him. Some of you, I think, have known him for years, since he was a young man. And many of you probably like him. He seems to be a likable guy. I don't think that's a bad thing. I just don't think it's enough to be our representative in Washington, especially when what he does, how he votes, is not necessarily in our best interests. And so to answer your question, I would vote differently than he votes. I would, for example, not have voted 70 times, 70 times, on the first bill of this term to eliminate the Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act was signed into law by President Richard Nixon. It has saved this country, over the course of those years, $22 trillion in healthcare costs. Mr. McCarthy wants to get rid of it. I don't think that makes much sense. Mr. McCarthy wants to get rid of the Health Reform Act that was passed. I think the Health Reform Act that was passed was a terrible law. It was a lousy compromise, but it has good elements in it. And I don't think it makes much sense to throw it all out and start from scratch. I would do that differently. And I can go down the list. I can see that our moderator wants me to move on. But I have a long list of disagreements with him. You'll find details on my website, phillipsforcongress.com.
Thank you, Terry.